On the bench today we have the Cry Baby wah, and we're going to do a mod with the facile inductors. A wah is essentially a swept tuned filter. So when we press it down, we're emphasizing a group of low frequencies, and when we pull it up, we're emphasizing a group of high frequencies. And what I'd like to do is quantify that. First of all, measure a reference response with the stock components and see how that performs over frequency, and then do the red and the yellow facile mods and see if there's any difference and measure it. So one of the things that is difficult to do though, and when you're quantifying one of these, is the number of measurements. If you use a traditional frequency sweep, which I'll show you in a second, you sweep it and then you analyze it, then you move it, then you sweep it and you analyze it, then you sweep it and then you analyze it, and so on. And what I'd like to do is have a more real-time measurement. So we're going to look at how we're going to do that today using an impulse response. But first of all, let's do a traditional swept frequency measurement using the REW, room equalization free software that many people use. To perform the measurement with the PC, we need an interface. I got a UA interface here. Then here is the output signal, which goes to the input of the pedal. This is the output, which goes to the input of the UA. And then here on the monitor or headphones, this is going to my mixing console, so we can actually listen to the sounds. So the pedal is not on, i.e. the LED is off. Let's now just run a quick frequency response. Okay, so that is a frequency sweep. So we start with a very low frequency and increment a sine wave all the way up to the end of the audio spectrum. And then we get a result. So this is the result in the software. It's a straight line that goes all the way across. And now if we engage the pedal, let's try another measurement. So now you can see that we have two plots. We have the flat plot with the pedal switched off, and then we can see our swept filter here, and it's emphasizing frequencies of around 1.8 to 2 kilohertz. So that's where the peak is, about 1.8. So now if I move the pedal into the up position, we can see we have a newer peak, and this peak is at about 150 Hz. One more measurement with the pedal in the halfway position. And now you can see we have a peak at about 500 Hz. So essentially we can emphasize frequencies with a bandpass peak from about 100 Hz to say 1.5, 1.8 kilohertz, and just sweep it up and down. And that essentially is the wah effect. But you can see the measurement is quite laborious because I have to sweep the pedal over and over and over again and measure and measure and measure. And what would be good is if we could do every frequency all at once. And that's possible, and that's what we call an impulse. So let's do some math now and look at what an actual impulse is. Here's the math part. So if we have a sine wave and we add it to another sine wave, they will add in a constructive manner and a destructive manner. So what does that mean? So when we have two peaks, like a peak here, and we add it to this point here, which is the same place in time, they'll add up and we'll get a higher amplitude. Conversely, when we destructively add these together, we'll get a lower dip here. And if you add enough sine waves together, ultimately you'll get a square wave like this. Actually, that should be further along, but for this analysis I think we're fine. Now let's look at, we just talked about a sine wave which always starts at t equals 0. If we look at a cosine, t equals 0 is at the 90 degrees part, or here where there's a peak voltage, and apart from that they're exactly the same. And so if we then add up a number of cosines infinitely, we'll get constructive addition here at t equals 0. So this is t equals 0, that plus that, t equals 0. They just keep adding up, and we do thousands or millions, and we end up, or an infinite amount, and we end up with this function called a sink. So this is the t equals 0 point where we've added up all these peaks, and then the rest of it was all destructive addition, and this is the residual of destructive. Keep going and it probably goes to a straight line. And this then now contains thousands of frequencies all at once. And then we can abstract that out a little or simplify it to a function called an impulse, which is something we electronically generate. It goes on and then it goes off really quickly. Many musicians have an analogy that an impulse is equivalent of a clap. It's like a little click noise. So it clicks on, clicks off. But because of this theory here, we have thousands of frequencies that make up this impulse. Now, there was a man called Fourier who said that any complex signal is made up of up to an infinite amount of sine waves. And we can see this here in the square wave. If we broke that down and just looked at the sine waves that made it up, we'd probably see, maybe 100 spectral components. And this is at the heart of a measurement technique called spectrum analysis. And we're going to do a lot of that today. We've already started, because when we looked at the frequency response, that was spectral analysis in the Roux software. So what we're going to do next now is build our own impulse. So let's look at how we're going to do that. I've now generated a pulse using my function generator. I usually use the function generator to generate sine waves, but I've reconfigured it. It has a pulse menu, so I went in there and created the smallest pulse I could make, and you can see on the screen it's about 100 microseconds in pulse width, 90 something, 96, 97. So let's just round that up to 100. 100 microseconds inverted, or 1 over 100 microseconds, is 10,000. So that's 10 kilohertz. So the relationship between time and frequency is inverted. So 1 over 100 microseconds equals 10 kilohertz. So that's going to be our cutoff frequency. So what's happening here is that this pulse contains every single frequency all the way up to 10 kilohertz. So now I don't have to sweep anymore. I have them all instantaneously within this pulse, or within this impulse. So now let me turn the pedal on. So the pedal is in the down position now, and what you see is the high frequency components. And I've got the frequency counter on, and we're seeing about 1.5, 1.6, which is in the same region that we saw earlier when we did the swept measurements. Now if I pull the pedal upwards, you can see the frequency decreases. So what have we got here? Well, let's go back up again. So when we put our impulse into a bandpass filter like what the Cry Baby has, a ringing occurs, and the frequency of that ringing corresponds to the center frequency of the actual filter. So when we're here where the pedal is fully in the down position, that is the 1.7, 1.8 kilohertz that we saw earlier. And then as we bring it down, it gets closer to the bottom end of the frequency response, around 100 hertz. So that's what that frequency is, or the frequency of that ringing. And the other thing you'll notice is the higher the frequency, the roll-off, this exponential roll-off that we see, is short, and when we take it down, it gets longer. And that's all mathematically correct. So the measurement is actually fantastic. But there's one problem. We can read the frequency as we're using the frequency counter in the scope, but it doesn't show us much more. And this is a time domain measurement. And what we really need to do is to put it into the frequency domain, and then we can see a lot more information. Now, a lot of scopes have an FFT function. And what's an FFT? An FFT is a fast Fourier transform. And it's a mathematical function. It's like a convolution that allows you to convert a time domain signal into a frequency domain signal. And that allows us to do our spectrum analysis. And to do that on this scope, I've had to write a piece of Python code, and I'll put it in the Calsonics GitHub, so you can get a copy as well. That will work with most tech scopes, but you can change it. It uses the Skippy language, which is a standard instrumentation, SCPI instrumentation language. So I don't think it's much of a leap to get it to a Rigol or a Siglent scope as well. So let's take a look now at this frequency domain measurement. So this is the code running that's extracting the time domain waveform. Like I said, I'll put it in the GitHub. It's Python code. So this at the top here is the time domain signal that we're extracting from the scope, about 2,000 points. And then what we're doing is a fast Fourier transform and converting it to the frequency domain. So let's turn the pedal off, and you can see we have our impulse. And here at 10 kilohertz, you can see that's where we get the roll off, because that pulse is 100 microseconds wide. And then we have these other Nyquist zones here that we could use if we wanted to do higher frequency stuff using 100 microseconds pulse. But a goal would be probably to get the pulse a little tighter and go up to 20 microseconds. So as you can see, this pulse contains every single frequency all the way up to 10 kilohertz. We get some what you call roll off here. So the frequency amplitude gets less past about 3 kilohertz, 3 or 4 kilohertz, but that's fine for this application. So let's now engage the pedal. And the pedal is in the down position. And then I'll pull the pedal up. And you'll see our filter. As I push it down again, as you see, our filter moves now in real time because I'm generating every single frequency all at once. And so now that lets me do a much deeper analysis of the pedal's performance when I do the mods with the inductors in part 2 of this video. Now what else can we do with our impulse? Just switch it off. So we've got an impulse here. We're sampling though quite high. This scope's sampling at 2 gigasamples. We'd really want to, and if we could decimate that down to something like 44 kilohertz, we could put this impulse response into something like an IR loader. I've got a Sonic cake lying around here somewhere. I think I've got a TC Electronics one as well. And that'd be a good experiment to do, actually, to see if we can set the wah, you know, somewhere in the middle, so we're emphasizing say 800, 900 hertz, and be able to like load in a cocked wah filter into an IR loader and see what that sounds like. That's another project though, and I have to add some more code for it. But right now, I think we have all the tools that we need to move on to part 2 of this video, which is changing the inductors out and doing the analysis and seeing what really changes when you modify a Cry Baby wah with new parts. That's it for this week. So I'll see you in part 2. Please like and subscribe and enjoy the impulse.